Hey everyone, so today's video we're going to be talking about some basic music symbols. So just like when you read a book, you have to learn all of the letters and what they mean and what they do before you can actually read a book. So with music, there are certain symbols that you have to learn about what they do and what they mean and what they look like and all that good stuff before you actually start reading it. So in every piece of music, there are some basic symbols that you will see all the time. So one of them is what you already see up here. This is called a staff. So it has 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these 5 lines together make up the staff. So the whole thing is the staff, and every single piece of music is going to have a staff on it. It doesn't matter what instrument you read, all of them have staffs. All right, so there are 2 more right at the beginning of a staff that you're going to see frequently. One is called a treble clef. This is one you've probably seen a lot. People use it for decorating and all sorts of crazy things. So this one is the treble clef, and when you see the treble clef, what that's going to tell you is that you are in the higher range. So what that means is adults, typically girls, women, will read on the treble clef. But if you're a guy, since your voice is generally naturally lower, you're going to read off of the bass clef. Now, you're not going to see them together like this. You'll only see one or the other. But these are the 2 that you can have, and they'll be right at the beginning of the staff. So you'll have either the treble clef, oops, not Claire, I don't know what I was writing, treble clef, or you'll have the bass clef. So next to that is where your music is going to begin. So there are a few symbols in there that's going to help you read that music. And that first symbol that I'm going to talk about is a bar line. So that is literally a line that runs straight down the staff. So if I were to draw a bar line without the staff, just on a blank area, it would literally just look like that. It's a line. But since it sits on the staff, that's why it looks the way it does, okay? So we have a bar line. Now these bar lines divide the staff into sections, okay? So you're not gonna see just a blank staff like this with a bunch of notes on it. You're always gonna see bar lines, and they're going to help separate the music. And it kind of helps also with visually seeing it. So like when you look at a phone number, a lot of us, like me, if I saw just a string of numbers like that, it would be really hard for me to memorize that. But if you separated it into sections, it's a little easier to think of. So instead of 210-398-1100, now it turns into 210-398-1100. In case you didn't know, that's the school phone number, so ha. But those little segments help your brain memorize it. Now some of you can just memorize the string of numbers, and that's great, but not all of us can. So these bar lines kind of help put things into segments and sections that make it easier for our brain to process it. All right, so we have these bar lines. Now, the next thing is that the space between these bar lines, all of this space, is called a measure. Okay, so you have the staff, and you have bar lines that separate the staff into measures. So right here, we have 1 measure, we have 2 measures. Then when you get to the end of the song, however long that song is, there could be like 300 measures, there could be like 10 measures. It just depends on the song and what the composer did. But at the end of the song, no matter what song it is, you're going to see a double bar line. Now, sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time, the second line of the double bar line is going to be thicker than the first. So that's like your brain saying, whoa, 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 stop, because that double bar line tells us the end of the song. It tells us when to stop. Double bar line. Okay, so we have regular bar lines that separate the song into measures, and at the end of the song, we have a double bar line to tell us that it's the end. So if I started here and I was reading, that means I would have 1, 2, 3 measures that make up this song. Now sometimes instead of having just a double bar line by itself, sometimes you'll see dots on it. And when you see dots next to the double bar line, it is no longer a double bar line. Now it's a repeat sign. So this symbol with the dots on it is telling us to repeat a part of the song. So if I was going to start at the beginning and read it, I would sing this measure, that measure, this measure, hit the repeat sign, repeat back, and sing it again. Okay, so it's just basically repeating the same thing again. And the music will usually tell you what section you're repeating, but I will tell you right now, you don't always go back to the beginning. Sometimes you only go back to the second measure, or you go back to the fifth measure, or whatever it might be. But when there's no dots, that's a double bar line, that's the end of the song. When there are two dots next to it, it's a repeat sign. So they look very similar to each other, but they have two very different purposes. All right, so those are your basic symbols. We have the staff, which is the whole thing. We have higher voices on treble clef, lower voices on bass clef. Then we have our music divided with bar lines into measures, so the space are measures. At the end of the song, you have a double bar line to tell you it's the end, and sometimes in a song, you'll have a repeat sign with those dots on it. Okay? So those are your basic music symbols.